gals. I'm so excited to be here with Lori. I love that I'm talking to a botanical dyer who has lots of experience. We're going to talk about lots of fun stuff this evening. And I think even though our group is small right now, we're going to go ahead and get started, and people will probably kind of trickle in, and I'll try to make sure I let them in. So Lori, introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about your farm.
Hey, I'm Lori. I'm half of Natural Cycles Farm. My partner Pete is actually downstairs getting ready to make dinner, consisting of part of the deer he hit with his truck last night. Um, so we have 30, we're in Southwest Michigan. We have 36 acres. Most of it is in pasture. And we currently have 50 sheep. They are a mix of getting close to a third Tunis, currently 4 CBM Rommeldales, one ram and three ewes, and hopefully we'll get another maybe 6 in April or May. And the rest of ours are crosses. I've only had livestock since 2017. Pete and I have been together for 9 years, and we both have been in agriculture for quite a while. But as far as the animals, it was just small livestock like chickens and ducks and so when we got together, we both wanted to have livestock, and so we got the sheep. We also have 4 steers. They're Jersey steers that I get from a farm that we get our raw milk from, and we raise those for our own meat and sell to others. And we also have chickens, geese, ducks during the season. We have done turkeys, plus 1 cat and 2 dogs. So that rounds out the animals. When we first got into livestock, I found a friend of a friend who was trying to downsize her flock, and she got into sheep because she just liked sheep. She wasn't a fiber person. So she just tended to mix and match. And if she got a ram that was interesting, she bred them together. So the first 12 sheep we got were quite interesting crosses. Everything from one Rommeldale Leicester Longwool ewe that I got to some rams that had 5 or 6 different breeds in them. So it was quite an interesting mix. And sometimes you get nice fiber from them, and sometimes it's not quite so much. But it was a really easy way to get into livestock without spending a fortune.
Sure.
So it's been really interesting seeing what the breeds are. And one of the crosses that I really like, I had some to begin with, and have created some, and that's like fine wool crossed with Tunis.
Oh, so tell me, I'm not familiar with Tunis. Tell me about the sheep and the fiber a little bit.
Tunis is considered a medium wool breed.
Okay.
They were developed in the mid to late 1700s from Tunisian fat-tailed sheep and some other breeds, and I can never remember what those breeds were, but they were common in, like, I think Thomas Jefferson had them, and they were also common throughout much of the South. They have red feet and a red head. When they're born, they're a really, really dark brown and chocolate brown, and then they lose that coloration as they get older. The wool is really interesting. It's considered a medium wool. A lot of the people who raise them primarily for meat, so they don't tend to pay much attention to the wool. So there are a few breeders who are looking at improving the wool. It has what are considered down-like characteristics. So it has some resistance to felting,
Oh,
which the down breeds have.
oh, sure.
But just a resistance. It's not like you can put them in the washer and dryer and come out with the same size. But they're also really bouncy, the fiber. So if I had a skein that was between my hands here and I stretched it out, it would be like out. It's just
Wow.
really bouncy. And they're curious animals. They're if we're out, we use it's called holistic grazing. It's considered similar to rotational grazing, but it really doesn't have that much of a strict schedule.
Okay.
So it's a lot of keeping an eye on what's happening with the growth rates of the grass and the weather and things like that. So we decide every day where we're going to move them, and we use the portable electric fencing and solar chargers. So we're out there moving the sheep once to 3 times a day, depending on the
Oh, wow. Okay.
season. And that includes their shelters that we move. I see a cattail. And so the tunas are really good on grass. They're actually, if you're familiar with the slow food movement that was started in Italy by, I can't remember, they have what's called an arc of taste, where they have
Yes.
spectacular varieties and breeds of many different of food plants and animals, and Tunis is one of the few sheep breeds that are on that list. So they're really, really wonderful from a flavor perspective.
Huh.
So we raise them for both the meat and the wool. And according to some sources, I've seen that they're considered potentially a triple purpose breed. So one of these days, I hope
You're going to milk one?
Yeah. Yeah. For something other than just if I have a lamb that's having trouble latching on and needs some help, but hopefully
Right.
to get actual sufficient milk to make cheese and things like that.
So are you crossing them with something specific, or are you breeding them back onto Tunis?
We are primarily breeding them to Tunis. It's just I had one merino a couple of years ago, and I didn't want to breed her to the ram I had that had 5 or 6 different breeds.
Mhm.
And so I bred her to the Tunis because I was already familiar with the Tunis merino cross. And the other time I bred I bred a Tunis ewe to a CBM ram because the CBM ram, at the time, I only had her sister and couldn't breed him to the one CBM. So I had him with a Tunis ewe and a couple other mixed CBM breeds. And it's just, that's a lot of people breed, do some mixing. But I think that it's less often that you have many multiples of different breeds within an offspring, because then I think the results are going to be a little less predictable.
For sure. Yeah. I didn't start out knowing any bit about crossbreeds, and I was quite honestly, a little bit of a snob when I started doing sheep, but I've fallen in love with crossbreeds. I just think there are things that you can get when you mix at the gene pool that
Yeah,
you don't get when you mix on the Carter. And I think that's really exciting.
right. It is. Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the history of breeds, they were all pretty much regional anyway. And the idea of, I mean, breeders breed crosses all the time when you're doing it for meat because you have that hybrid bigger, so that the progeny is going to be bigger. I mean, if you're going to do it for meat,
Sure.
you're going to get more output. So why not breed fiber animals as well to get some interesting characters?
Right.
So,
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're gonna jump around here a little bit, but it's for the love of plant month. So you
right.
know I want to talk about botanical dyeing and what you're growing in for dye plants and you're teaching indigo, so I want to know about that too.
Okay. So maybe a little bit of history of my natural dyeing. I've been doing it for, I was thinking about this the other day. I've been doing natural dyeing for about 20 years. You know how time just flies. So nearly 20 years. And like many dyers, when I first started, I basically went out my backyard and dyed anything I could find. I, after the first couple of years, I had I was getting into weaving as well. So I decided to make a gamp, which is if you do a weaving gamp that's based, you can do it based on colors or weaving structures. And
Okay.
so I did it on colors. So I had in the warp like 2-inch squares of different colors all along the warp. And then I duplicated those colors on the weft. And so you see not only how the colors go together when they meet up the same dye, but also how they blend with other colors.
Wow.
I was trying to find it, but at the moment my studio is such a mess that I couldn't find it. But as soon as I do find it, I'll make a post on
Yes.
the community page so everyone can see it. But what I've done since I first started is, first of all, I was trying to get consistency and repeatability,
Mhm.
and I wanted to use primarily dyes that like I didn't need to have 3 times my weight of fiber or something like that
Yeah.
because it's just too much work to collect enough dye material to dye a reasonable quantity of fiber. And if some of those dye plants are um, not in abundance, I think it's unethical to take more than a small portion of it.
Yes.
So I've been concentrating on more of the historical dyes.
Okay.
Um, I I did try growing madder, and I have to do that again because since we've just been on this farm since 2017, and I started right then, not all the places that I tried to start it were very good, and we've got a much better idea of where it can grow now. So we'll be starting that. So Matter's a great one. I do use it all the time. I did find a great source of powdered matter,
Oh, good.
which goes a whole lot further than the roots themselves, the chips and stuff.
Right.
Um, and then and then as far as dyes that don't grow here, I do use um cochineal,
Mhm.
and I do use Brazil wood and a few others. The ones that can be obtained locally easily are, you can get yellow from a lot of things.
Right.
So I focus my yellows on marigolds,
Mhm.
which is a wonderful one, and it's one of the easiest to suggest to people to get into
Yes.
because all you have to do is go to the garden store and buy a flat of marigolds, and
Right.
you're going to have enough
Color.
for pounds and pounds of wool. Um, I love growing coreopsis.
Mhm.
Um, that's a really good one, especially because I like the plants that do interesting things when you add modifiers,
Mhm.
like ammonia or vinegar or copper or iron, and you could just spread out you could broaden the types of colors that you can get. Then I like Osage orange a lot. That being, I haven't been able to find a local woodworker that can provide me with a supply, but there's a woodworking shop in upstate New York where I can get get
It's,
a by the pound. And I get like I'll order 5 pounds every 2 or 3 years,
yep.
and that'll last me a long time. So, and let's see what other oh golden marguerite, which is also Dyer's chamomile.
Mhm.
Um, that one it's interesting because yellow is a really interesting color with the plants because you can get a wide variety of shades of yellow, and you
Oh,
really when you first get into it, you think, okay, maybe yellow's yellow, but the difference in shading of the different yellows is really exciting. And then you can open up a whole world of other colors by overdying. So
right.
that's really nice. I don't grow a whole lot more other yellow plants. I know you can do dahlias and other things like that, which would be great because they're wonderful flowers as well, but we haven't gotten around to that. And then there's indigo. Um, I know Catherine's grown indigo. That's you, yep. And Teddy, you grow it too.
I do.
And it's the most magical of the dyes, really. Um, I grow I grow some every year. And since summer is a really busy time, I don't often get a chance to use it during the summer. So I do dry the leaves
Okay.
and I can't remember where I got the instructions, but um, I have used, I have made an indigo vat, not an organic one, but a thiourea dioxide
Mhm.
indigo vat with the leaves, with the dried leaves. And I was really pleased with the brightness of the blue that I can get
Huh.
from that. And there's really an amazing amount of color that in the that amount of leaves. I think 100 grams of the dried leaves was enough to dye like a medium shade of blue over a pound of fiber.
Wow. Do you have to um extract from the leaves first?
There's a couple different ways that you can do it. And this method, you basically first you cook the leaves and discard that first lot of water because that'll give you a lot of yellows and browns. Um, and then you basically add sodium hydroxide and thiourea dioxide and simmer it another 20 minutes and strain off the water and then do it again with fresh water. And
Okay.
you do that about 3 times and you get a big enough vat and you've already added the thiox and the calcium hydroxide. So it's already in a reduced state by that stage.
Oh.
And you can just do a conventional cut. It's just in that state, it's a conventional vat.
Huh.
And
That's so
that's,
exciting.
yeah. And so I went to a symposium a few weeks ago with the Rust Belt Fiber Shed, which is in Cleveland.
Mhm.
And they have a much larger scale project with indigo where they have been doing the more traditional extraction to obtain powdered indigo. and they're currently selling, I just saw they started selling kits for a henna vat. So that's another sort of organic vat, using the powdered indigo extracted from the Japanese indigo that they're growing. They're growing it on a much larger scale,
Sure.
like up to like a city lot worth of indigo, and then drying it. That's really exciting. So yeah, I find the natural dyes more appealing from first of all, from an environmental standard. I know, and I tell people this all the time, that just because they're natural doesn't mean they're safe either for the dyer or for the environment. But there are ways that you can minimize the effects on the environment.
Right.
For example, for the mordants, I use alum, copper, iron, and I use tin as well. But I store the mordants in glass jars in between using. So I'm really wasting very little of it.
Yep.
And a lot of the modern research on mordants has shown that, first of all, you don't need as much as like some of the books in the 70s were suggesting.
For sure. Yeah.
That's one thing. And also the amount of the mordant that gets taken up by the fiber with each mordanting step is not, it doesn't use up all the mordant in the bath. So you're really able to use quite a bit less on an ongoing basis. So that's good. Yeah. I tend to keep dye baths for quite a long time. And this can be for if you're somebody who is doesn't really like smelly things, it may be a little hard to do, because obviously a cochineal bath, when it's left a few days, will end up starting to smell like dead bugs. And baths, more dye baths of other plants get to start to smell like rotting dead plants and stuff. But it seems a waste to me to use a dye bath once and then just throw it out. So I have also canned some dye baths. I can't remember. Oh, we were expecting some meat, half a hog last fall. And so we had to quickly find some room in the freezer, and I had some frozen coreopsis flowers, and I didn't have any need to dye that much because it's a really strong dye. So I just made up the dye bath and canned it in quart jars. So it's just a water bath canning process. And so when I need it, I could just take it out of the jar and use it without having to go through all that.
So that makes it shelf stable.
Yeah. So, because it's just basically a water solution. So, and you're also not going to eat it. So you're not worried about killing every single bacteria in there, because
right.
It is definitely something that if you live in an apartment or a small house or something like that and don't have the storage space, it's not going to be easy to do, because like a typical 3 to 4 gallon dye pot's going to fill up quite a few jars. So
yeah, I often have many on the floor in different states of decomposition. because I have a hard time throwing them away too. But that can also change your pH and change your color, which is kind of
It definitely does. And so it's really hard to get the consistency. You know, when you look at an old tapestry that may have been created in the 15 or 1600s, those colors are spectacular still, and those were definitely made with natural dyes. So we don't. I know those methods exist somewhere. They're written down. It's just that we don't tend to use them.
right.
The methods quite as complex methods as they used to do it. Like I can't imagine taking 3 months and fermentation and all that stuff to get to the stage with madder where you get that red of the British Army uniforms, for example.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Is that turkey red or is
I think so.
okay?
I think it is.
Yeah, I think so too. Huh. But fascinating that that is a possibility out there.
Yeah, yeah. There's a book by a guy by the name of John C. Lyles, who's reproduced many of the older dye formulas. And I've read through some of them, and they produce spectacular colors. It's just that I don't know if I have the time or energy to put into it. So we just make allowances, and I think that the colors that we can get with natural dyes, even using simple processes, are well worth the effort.
Right.
So
Yep. I agree. So you are growing more than indigo on your farm, which is truly a diversified farm.
incredibly diverse, yes. Um, dye plants include the indigo, marigolds, coreopsis, dyer's chamomile. We have lots of wild goldenrod.
Okay.
That's one that it has spectacular colors fresh, but I haven't found that drying definitely doesn't work very well. Freezing is good, but I don't get quite the vibrant colors that I get otherwise. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we grow for dye plants.
Right.
But we also grow organic vegetables, some small fruit, and take that to the farmer's market during the main part of the season. Pete's the primary grower from that perspective.
Okay.
He does most of that work, and that seems to work out for us. He's also the cook.
Well, that's nice.
I think years of I like to cook, but I don't love to cook. So years of cooking as when my family was young, I think used up a lot of my enthusiasm for it. So.
Right. So then you're doing some teaching.
Yes. I'm doing a lot of teaching in Michigan. There's a folk school called Michigan Folk School in Ann Arbor.
Oh, okay.
And they have an incredible range of classes from hat making and the dyeing that I do, and a whole lot of other fiber crafts, crocheting and weaving and knitting, all the way to woodworking and blacksmithing and a whole lot of other things like that. So it's a really neat place. And I will be teaching The let me see, a class that's based on a experiment that's done in a book by Jenny Dean.
Okay.
That's you basically get 30 color. There's 30 different shades of color from one dye, using no mordant, alum, copper, iron, tin, and rhubarb. And then you use vinegar for after treatments. You use vinegar, ammonia, copper, and iron. And let me just get. I don't know if you can see it, but I posted a picture of one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those. So it just gets. This is one thing that I started doing when I wanted to do when I wanted to be able to reproduce colors, to get. I don't ever expect to get exactly the same each
Right.
time, but you'd like to get, if you have a target, you'd like to get something fairly close. And also, if you've got a project where you have certain colors that you're interested in, being able to refer to these cards to say that, okay, if I start with madder and I'm using an alum mordant and iron after dip, that's going to be the kind of color I get. So that if you're looking for a particular palette, you can use this to guide your development.
Got it.
That's one class. And then I do an indigo class where we do an organic indigo vat, a thiox vat, and then depending on the time of the year, I either do a vat with the dried indigo leaves, or we do some fresh indigo dyeing.
Okay. So,
That,
go ahead. I was going to say for folks that aren't familiar with indigo dyeing, tell us what is an organic vat, and and how is that different from the thiox vat?
Okay, so traditionally, an indigo vat is made by basically rotting, allowing a fermentation or rotting within the of the leaves sitting in water. So you'd start out with having a full bucket of indigo leaves, filling it with water, leaving it out in the sun for several days so it starts to ferment and it starts to rot, and that rotting process produces ammonia, and the ammonia changes the form of the indigo chemical in the vat. And that's going to, and then there's all these filtration steps that you ultimately end up getting powdered indigo. Most people don't do that extended process.
Right.
So there are some chemicals that can do what's called the reduction and then an oxidization. You want to, the indigo dyeing is one of the most chemically interesting dyes, natural dyes. So you first dissolve the indigo in water. It's the powdered indigo in water. And you want to push the pH towards the basic end of the pH spectrum. And you can do that with ammonia. You can also do it with one chemical called thiourea dioxide. And there's also, if you're familiar with RIT dye remover, it's a fairly close cousin of that same chemical.
Right.
So you allow the thiox to interact with the indigotin molecules, and what it's called, it reduces it reduces it's a reduction, which I'd have to get my dye chemistry book out to keep all the facts straight.
Right.
But when it's in that reduced stage, it's in a stage where it can grab onto the fiber. But if you've ever looked at an indigo vat, underneath the liquid, it looks yellow. And the magic comes when you pull it out of the dye bath and the contact with oxygen turns the yellow blue. Thiourea dioxide is it's a really smelly chemical. So if you're looking to, and it requires some caution to use. I'm not going to say it's not safe. It just requires some caution, and you want to use it in a well-ventilated area. There have been some vats that have been developed that use organic compounds to do that chemical reduction.
Right.
And some of those compounds include fructose, which you can buy in powdered form. You can also use fruit peelings, and you can also use things like spent madder from a madder dye bath, and you can also use henna.
Yep.
All of those substances have two things in common with regards to an indigo vat. One, they're a whole lot safer to use than Thiox. And two, they require a lot more patience. So it's easy to try to do an organic vat and get to the point where you think it doesn't work. And so that's why I think the Thiox vats are used a lot more often. They're workhorses.
Right.
I use that all the time. I have an ongoing vat that I just re-energize whenever I need it. And you can do the same thing with the organic vats. It just does take more skill and a lot more patience, and getting that balance between the pH and the temperature and things like that just takes a lot more patience. So I have used the organic vat with fructose. I have not used it with the fruit peels, and I do have henna, and I haven't used that. But
I've done banana,
okay.
which was a fail. And I've done madder, which was a fail. And I've done Thiox, and that has been a success. But I'm gonna keep trying, I just, it takes time and energy and attention to detail, which I struggle with. So I'm just in awe when people can, create indigo regularly.
Beverly, I saw your comment, and the
oh yes, SIG.
The urine, it has to be fermented urine, because that's fresh urine. Fresh urine hasn't decomposed enough to create ammonia, and it's the ammonia that's used in the vat. To what it does is not so much fermented, but it for an indigo vat to work, it has to be at a pH level or alkalinity level of 9 to 11, depending on what you're dyeing. Right. If you're dyeing wool, it's better at about 9. If you're dyeing cotton and other cellulosic fibers, it could be up to 11. So, but yeah, that's incredibly true. They used to, in medieval times, they used to collect urine mostly men's urine, I think, maybe because it's a whole lot easier to collect. Um, and I don't know whether they purchased it or what, but that's yeah.
Yeah, speaking of stinky, right?
Yeah. Well, I have done the whole process of allowing plants to decompose in the sun for a while when I was doing Viking reenactments, and so I was growing woad instead of indigo. And one of the years that I had a really good harvest of the woad leaves, I did that whole process. I think I had 2 full buckets of woad leaves, and I believe I ended up with maybe 2 teaspoons of powdered indigo. And at that stage, I didn't know enough about the process to know that I could have died right then and there and didn't necessarily have to go through the whole.
Oh.
But
Hmm.
but there's not as much of the indigo chemical in woad compared to Japanese indigo or the tropical indigos. So
Right. And woad, they're like, we can't grow woad here.
right, there are many places out west where it's not
It's invasive.
invasive. It did self-seed where I am in Michigan, but it didn't persist.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that is always an issue, is if it can not only self-seed, but if it persists in an area and become invasive.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I think it doesn't generally seed until the second year. Is that true?
it is a biennial, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about the indigo chemical. It occurs in the world in like maybe, I can't remember, 5 forms at least, five
Yeah.
in 5 different plants, and none of them are related to each other.
Right.
Yeah. So isn't I find that's one thing I find so amazing about natural dyes in general, and um indigo in particular, that evolution could have worked to such an extent that you create the same chemical in 5 totally unrelated plants from tropical areas
I was
all
gonna
the
say,
way to northern Europe.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Huh. So many levels of adventures.
so I'm teaching in at Michigan Folk School the middle of March. I think the 30 colors class is sold out, but there are some openings in the indigo class. And then I'm doing the same pair of classes in mid-September, also at Michigan Folk School. And then the third class I'm doing at Michigan Folk School, this is looking way ahead, but if you wanted to plan for it, is the second weekend in November. I'm we're going to, it's a 2-day class, and we're going to, using one of the pictures that they have for the national palettes of the national park, we're going to dye all the colors. Like there might be 4 or 5 different colors, and we're gonna dye them. And the whole idea with that is we're gonna look at all these cards that I have created, and I'm gonna see how close the students can get to what combinations of dyes will get the colors closest to those. So I haven't quite, this is the first time I will have been doing this class, so I'm not quite sure how much leeway to give the students, because I'll already know how I get those colors, and we'll see how that goes.
What a
So what
fun
else?
class.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to that. So I hope I hope it goes ahead. If anybody's in the Michigan area, I'm going to be doing the Indigo class at Woven Art Yarn Store in East Lansing on June 2nd. So if you're up in the Lansing area, then we can do that. And then I got into Wisconsin sheep and wool doing the two classes, the Indigo class and the 30 colors class, and that's the first weekend after Labor Day. So that I'm really excited about.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that's supposed to be a fantastic fiber show.
Is this the first year that you're going to teach there?
Yeah. I also applied to vend. And that was amusing because when I put in the application, my contact said that they had 80 people on the wait list, but they don't take vendors based on where you are on the wait list. Right. They try to get Margo, you should come to Wisconsin for sure. But they don't take the first person on the wait list if they have an opening. They curate it very closely, and an advantage is if somebody's teaching, they like to have them there, and they also do like to have more farms than indie dyers, sure. Basically, because they're promoting the actual farm to fiber idea.
So you're vending as well?
Yeah. And if anyone is in the Wisconsin area, I need a booth help on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of, I would think there would be lots of WAFA folks.
I hope so. Well, just think, if anybody sees this and is interested, you can get a,
let Lori know.
Free entry into Wisconsin sheep and wool.
Oh, right, as a vendor. Oh. How cool. All right. Okay. So that's where you're teaching. Do you have other places that you're vending?
Mostly in Michigan. I'm going to be at Fiber Expo, which is in Ann Arbor in April and October. And then Michigan Fiber Festival, which is 10 minutes away from me. So that's the third weekend in September. Oh, the first one I'm going to be is also here in Allegan, Michigan, and it's an alpaca fest, and that's the second full weekend in April. So, Charlotte, Michigan also has a show in May. So if you're in the Michigan area and you're up to Charlotte Maker Fest is, I think, the third weekend in May.
Okay. So. All right. And then you're showing this weekend.
I am showing this weekend. My sale is on Saturday at 3 p.m. I think I'm right after you.
Oh, right after me. Nice.
Yeah. And I do have two specials. One of the specials is I can't remember it. I was reminded when I saw the program, but it's a discount on dye kits. I think possibly 25% off dye kits with a purchase of, I think with a purchase of at least 4 ounces of undyed fiber. So that's a really good one. And I have Weld seeds. Weld is another yellow dye, a really good ancient dye. I have a lot of Weld seeds, and I also have a lot of Coreopsis seeds. Okay. And I am announcing a special for the show that with the purchase of $50 worth of undyed fiber, you get free your choice of either Coreopsis or Weld seeds.
Oh, nice.
And just the warning on that is that they may not get to you really, really clean. So they may have little bits of plant in them as well. but they are from last year and they'll be really viable.
Isn't that like vegetable matter and fiber? That means it really comes from a farm.
Exactly. So they're nice and fresh, so they'll be really good. And weld, I think, is one of the best yellow dyes. It's just a little bit of it can be a struggle to get growing. It really likes lighter soil, and it took me a couple of years here to find out where on the farm I had the lighter soil for it to germinate and do well.
Is it a perennial there?
It's considered a short-lived perennial.
Okay.
So each individual plant will last at least 2 years, possibly 3 or 4.
Okay.
But it self-seeds easily too.
Okay. That's one I've thought about.
It's a really strong dye.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that one is that you harvest it after the seeds have formed, and then you use the whole plant. So you can harvest the seeds and use the plant material for the dye as well. And it's the whole plant, not just the leaves. So the stem as well. So
like you pull it.
Oh, no, I would cut it. I cut the stalks. Yeah. Because then since it's a perennial, most of the time it will grow back from that plant. So you don't want to pull it.
Got it. All right. All right. So we have a few minutes left, and I would love to open it up. If you guys want to unmute yourself, we can have conversation. You guys can ask Lori any questions that you have about her farm or anything that she's doing.
I have a couple of questions for you, Lori.
Yeah.
Hi. It's nice to see you and talk to, I see you, but you never see me.
Yeah, that's true.
One thing you didn't say about Tunis, because the very first interaction I had with you was I bought Tunis from you for Shave 'em to Save 'em.
You're right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's such a fun fiber because, as you said, it is so springy. You could make elastic bandages out of it,
Pretty much. Yeah, you're right. Back to both the Tunis and the CVM are Shave 'em to Save 'em breeds. And I do.
Oh, that's right. I did CVM with you too for that. When I saw that sheet that you put up today with the 30 colors from, so this is more like a mechanics question. When you embark on a project like that, like my head was spinning. Like I thought, is she like the lady with the spinning plates with this mordant going and these modifiers? Did you do that over a long period of time, or was that like one weekend?
Well, when I teach the class, it's one day. And we do in that class, we do 2 different dyes. And I prepare the samples all way beforehand. And that does take hours. So the samples I've devised a way so that it's the least confusing possible, at least to me. So we have a dye bath and we put the samples in, and then you have to separate all the samples and put them in the different modifiers. And then it does take a little bit of patience and concentration to get them on the sample sheets without confusing them.
But you pre-mordant it before the class?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise it would, dye classes are frustrating in that there's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
So if I added the mordanting as well, it would just be, we might as well have breakfast and lunch and dinner and all those other, there's only so much you can talk about related to the class. in that day. So there has to be a lot of stuff that I do ahead of.
Yeah, we did something like that out at Teddy's last summer where we did, we dyed the rainbow in a day, but everything was pre-mordanted for that too. The other thing I want, just a quick question. When you use rhubarb as a mordant, are you just using the leaves?
Yeah, and so the compound in rhubarb leaves that contributes to fiber dyeing is the oxalic acid, and that's not with a strict definition of what a mordant is, it's not. But it does no, because a mordant technically is it's a metal salt.
Oh, okay.
And oxalate isn't a metal salt, but it does have some effect on some dyes. And Jenny Dean, who wrote the book Wild Colors, and she's the one I got the idea from the class from. In her updated version of the book, she doesn't use the rhubarb leaves as a mordant anymore.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's one of the reasons I keep it in is because it's very accessible to people. I mean, if you've got rhubarb leaves, the rhubarb leaves aren't going to be used when you cut the pull the rhubarb, but you can still, it gives enough of a color that I think it's worth it because of its accessibility.
Yeah, I've tried it and it worked fine because I always think when you go out and cut rhubarb, you've got, you're for food, you want the stalk, and then you have all these gigantic leaves. So I thought, what the heck? As Teddy says, throw it in the pot. So
I
because
don't know how well you can see it, but that it does, this is madder.
Yeah.
And it does give some color with madder.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, mostly because it's accessible and it's easy to use, and it's a product, it's an item that is normally a waste product. So if you can get some use out of it, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. So tonight, in honor of this, I pulled out a poison dart frog bat that I've been spinning. Laurie did this series on frogs, and I still have 2 poison dart frog bats.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and you've got some really beautiful salmony color in it that's so pretty. I've just pulled a strip off the bat.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah,
nice.
I'd have to check my notes to remember what's in it. But I'm
They
glad
crack me up every time I see them, and I have a bin of colored fiber to dye. And when I open it, there are the poison darts.
that's wonderful.
So with rhubarb, are you saying that you would only use that to mordant fiber for certain dyes? Or would you use it across the board as a fixed, I don't know.
I try it with everything. And it doesn't have much of an effect with some dyes.
Okay.
So by doing this 30 colors test,
Right.
I can narrow down which dyes it's useful for.
Okay. So do you think of it as a modifier? Like, does it modify the color? Because the madder looked more pink to me.
That's, I think, a monitor thing.
Okay.
Because it's actually
It's a pretty good salmon.
it's a salmon.
Okay.
Yeah. It is a pretty good salmon. But yeah, I'd have to get out a bunch of different cards to see what else it's really useful for.
All right, Catherine, did you have another question?
No, I think that was it. The only other one that I had was I got a dye kit from you and the mordant is copper and I haven't used it yet. And I just wondered, when you mordant with copper, do you have a favorite dye to use it with? Do you know what I'm
Osage,
asking? Like, do you love it better with goldenrod or do you love it better with madder or?
I like it with Osage orange actually.
Oh, okay.
It gives it gives, you know how Osage orange is a kind of goldy yellow with
Yeah.
alum. It goes somewhat greeny gold with
Oh,
the Osage orange, and I just think it's a really nice color. So,
good.
and but I like it with cochineal too. I'd say
Okay,
that's one of the other favorites with the copper.
good. Thanks.
Yeah.
So Lori, it's great to see you again. And it was awesome to meet you in Michigan last year at the Fiber Festival. I was there with Katie.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of drug around. So you were talking about that book or the I guess it wasn't really a book. It needs to be a book. The older historic colors where they're super bright and all of that. I wonder if the information on all of that would have been kept at the apothecary's location on mixing those versus being written down in the apothecary um, location. That would be something interesting to research on. I'd love to have a book like that just to read it. Oh my god,
Yeah,
I'm not
there
into
are
the
several books actually that go into some of the older formulas for dyes. So one thing, dyeing is like especially in the Middle Ages, those dye formulas were really secret guild knowledge. It wasn't common knowledge. So I think that's one reason why some of them are so hard to find, and even today you really have to search for them.
yeah, that would be so interesting to learn how to do that. I have not dipped my toe in the dye pot yet. Um, and I think the biggest reason, I'm going to be honest with you, the biggest reason is because almost everything is yellow, and yellow is not a color that I'm comfortable with. In any shade of yellow, it washes me out. And so it's not even a color that I wear. And I don't think I even have anything in my house that's yellow. However, I am growing sunflowers this year. It's the first time I actually picked up sunflower seeds to grow. It's like, what am I thinking? The deer will eat them. I do not have to worry about it. They'll poop the seeds all over, and then there'll be sunflowers all across these mountains. But you were talking about coreopsis, which is just like, oh, those are so pretty. Is there specific ones that you use when you're dyeing? Because I mean, I have a coreopsis. I'm sure it's still out there. I don't think the deer ate it. I have a coreopsis, a perennial out there. So, and I know, Teddy, I think you were talking about a coreopsis, a red one or a margarita one. Yeah, a red one. I've never seen them in red, only in the yellow ones.
I have most of the varieties of Dyer's coreopsis, the coreopsis, which is a modern cultivar of plains coreopsis. The native plant, it has some orange in it. I have some plants from a planting I did last year that the petals came out almost probably 90% really deep red. And then the rest of the plants were the normal mix of the red and the yellow, with the yellow being on the outside and the orange being on the inside. So I kept, when I was collecting seeds, no, that plant was from like 2 years ago, and it was in one part of my garden. And I kept those seeds separate from the other area where it had a whole lot more of the mixture of colors. So it will be interesting to see if those flowers give any difference in colors. If anything, it may be a stronger dye, so that it's already a strong dye. So maybe it won't take quite as much. But I have had the same similar results even from the 100% yellow coreopsis. So I believe it's just in the nature of the plant, and it doesn't matter which cultivar you're using, you'll get a similar result.
And so in the natural dyeing, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Teddy about this when she was, oh, well, you did it different in Facebook. We weren't actually chatting. It's hard to type when you can talk. So most everything that we're talking about when you're talking about dyeing, you're talking about flowers, mostly bugs, cochineal bugs. Okay. What about the herbs? So, I mean, some of the herbs have flowers. So I have a ton of lavender plants that I have planted here on my piece of property. And I absolutely love lavender. Of course, I love the smell of it. I use, I have culinary lavender, medicinal lavender, and then just lavender so that the bumblebees can play on. But, and then there's, besides the lavender, I mean, there's all kinds of, I try to grow a lot of herbs. Some of them flower, some of them don't. So with the dye, the natural dyeing, are any of the herbs used, or is it more in the flowers versus herbs? I mean, herbs have flowers, and flowers can be medicinal and we can eat them. So
I'd say yes, there are some plants that we would call herbs that do give color, and it just depends on the plant itself, whether it's the whole plant or just the flowers or just the leaves that give the best color. But in general, the plants that have historically been used to get the brightest colors, the most color fast colors, haven't been the plants we also eat.
okay, so then it is more on the flower side.
Well, not necessarily the flower side. There's plenty of dye plants where you use the plant itself, the leaves and the stem and stuff like that.
Okay.
But the best colors don't come from plants we also eat.
Okay.
And I think that's pretty useful, actually. Leave the plants that we eat to eat them, and then we have the other plants.
Oh yeah, it's just, you know, it's a very harsh environment where I live, and so there's like only, I mean, if I can get a plant to grow, it's like, oh yeah, and I'm saving your seeds because you've made it up here, which means that you will make it next time.
Yeah.
And so it's, and I mean, and I love flowers. I absolutely love them, and I love having them in the garden, and I like, you know, as much natural nature as I can get up here. So it's just like my herbs most of them do really well. And then there are certain flowers that will do really well.
Yeah.
And then other flowers, it's like, you know, that's not going to grow up here. So I'm kind of like, I can't do that. So I was just trying to see the expansion as to where it can go.
Well, where are you located?
I am in the north central Cascades of Oregon, on top of a mountain.
So what zone is it?
Well, I kind of, according.
Oh, whoops.
Whoops, we lost you. Well, hopefully she'll come back and and listen to this last part. But there is a book, and the author escapes me now, and it's probably out of print, but every once in a while you can run across it, that has a lot of samples of common garden plants, including like purple basil and stuff. And she has pictures of, yeah, I'm sorry. It has pictures of the colors that you get from various parts of the plants, and she does include in her book some of the plants, some plants that are culinary and medicinal herbs as well. So next time I get that out over the next couple days, I will post on WAFA the name of that book and why I think it's such a useful book.
Perfect. And my sound is back. So thank you very much for that. So yeah, right. I mean, she's giving me all this great information. It's like, I can't hear. So yeah, so zone wise, because I mean, I get into the minuses up here, and so 7 is not going to work. So 5, I don't plant anything over 5, zone 5.
Yeah,
So
that's what we are.
yeah, you know, and that's just to be safe. And I kind of look at it, it's like, if you survive 2 winters, because no winter is the same, if you survive 2 winters and the heat of the summer, then you're going to be fine.
Right.
You know, so
And I think there are things here that I consider they're not annuals, but I would consider them an annual because
yeah,
I plant them every year. So, you know, I'll plant Coreopsis this year. I'll plant I'll plant all of those things that don't come back. But you know, not every plant gives color. And of the ones that do, you know, Lori has said it, yellow is or
yeah, you know,
gold.
and there's certain plants that, I mean, it's just like I absolutely love. Like okay, we are in the middle of winter. I have 2 feet of snow on the ground. Okay, but my little flax sitting out there, I mean, she's green. She's going, hey, I'm ready. Give me spring, you know? And so I know she's going to do fine. And so, you know, when her seeds come, I save her seeds, and then I sprinkle them other places to try and get more of them growing. And, you know, like I said, my lavender does really well. A lot of my other herbs do really, really well. Columbines grow like wildflowers up here, and I love my columbines. And you know, I'll go out there when the little pods get the seeds, and I shake the plant and throw the seeds. And you know, and I love being able to do that. But it was, you know, it's like, what can I use when, you know, my husband talks all the time. He goes, well, honey, you need to be dying. It's like, oh, I'm not ready to do that, because it's like a rabbit hole that I wouldn't know, you know. It's like, really? Then you better build me
Start
a
with one thing.
studio so I got a place to put all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you're there's only so many rabbit holes you have one has time to fall down.
Right.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, Lori, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, gals, so much for joining us this evening.
it
I
was
know
a blast.
that these are not, last week's and this week's won't get up until after the show, but they will be up on YouTube after the show.
Good.
So, all right. Well, thank you again. I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Lori.
Mhm.
And we'll
Bye-bye.
see everybody at the sales on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday too.
Yep, we will. All right. Thank you, guys.